Hi, everyone, and welcome to the latest edition of Reach the World's Endurance22 Expedition. I'm so happy to speak with all of you today from around the US and around the world as we connect again with Tim and our friends aboard the SA Agulhas 2 as a part of the Endurance22 Expedition. So today we have some amazing guests to speak with you all today, a little bit more about what it is that goes into these amazing expeditions. Specifically today, we're going to be talking about what is it that we do when we talk about an ice camp? What goes into that? How do you set those things up? What do you have to think about? All of that fun stuff. And a couple of Tim's friends today are going to be telling us exactly what it means to set up an ice camp. So we'll be talking about that. But before we do, I do want to mention to all of you out there that we are speaking with Tim live aboard the SA Agulhas 2. So the signal may be really great if we get lucky in terms of the ship's position. The signal may be a little bit challenging. We may even lose him for a quick second, but that's okay, because that's the excitement of adventure and the amazing technology that we have with us to be able to connect Tim and you all with Tim as we take part in this incredible expedition. So that being said, Tim, what have you been up to the last few days?
Hey, Chris, it's great to see you again, and welcome everyone aboard the SA Agulhas 2. We are, as Chris said, in really the heart of the Weddell Sea right now, right in the search box. Right where we want to be, looking for Ernest Shackleton's lost ship, Endurance. As you can tell by what I'm wearing today, it is a cold day today. It is, for those in the US, it is about single digits Fahrenheit, somewhere around -15 Celsius. So I'm using all of my polar gear today when I'm outside on the ship to stay nice and warm. But over the last couple days, we've had some really, really beautiful days. It's been a little chilly still, not as cold as this, but the sun has come out. We've had the chance to get off the ship a few times and walk around and explore on the ice. Plenty of wildlife encounters. In fact, just before I came up here, I was looking out over the back of the ship, and a minke whale surfaced in the open water right behind the ship where the AUV is down 10,000 feet, scanning the seabed, and this minke whale popped out and did a big blow from its blowhole and arched its back and went right back down and sort of followed this open water off as far as I could see it. So amazing wildlife things happening like that. Aboard the ship, we've been keeping busy. The science team is actually out on the ice right now. I can see lots of little fluorescent colored dots of people out doing ice measurements and snow measurements and their ice flow science. Last night we screened part 2 of the Shackleton movie. So it was kind of surreal actually to see a dramatic reenactment of endurance thinking on the big screen and know that we were on a ship, right in sort of the area where all of that happened. So lots of fun being had, lots of optimism about the search ahead. Along with sort of the cooler conditions, the ice has gotten a little thicker. So at various points, we've been sort of nudging our way through the ice. The ship is using all of its amazing tricks to keep us from getting stuck. The captain and the crew really just know exactly what they're doing when it comes to navigating this icy world. But from what I can see, and I'll take you outside in just a minute, it just looks like a frozen sea. It looks like we're sailing on a frozen sea from here.
That's so amazing. And if you haven't had a chance to watch it yet, definitely watch the live stream that Tim did with Captain Knowledge Bengu at the end of last week with our friends at Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants, because it shows the incredible work and dedication and passion it takes to be a ship captain, and then on top of that to be an ice pilot as Captain Knowledge is, and his crew are exceedingly skilled at being there and I know that there's such an amazing group of people that come from different backgrounds and expertises that are all working together to search for endurance, and hopefully that minke whale is a good sign for things to come in the hopefully the near future, as these incredible autonomous underwater vehicles crawl the bottom of the Weddell Sea looking for that ship. So Tim, I would love to see outside if you can get the laptop out there before we bring in our guests. And as Tim makes the adjustments on his end, this is just yet again one of the amazing things that we can do when we are live. So you are all here now seeing exactly what it is you're live looking at Antarctica in all of its glory, and aboard the SA Gulls too. So in case anyone was skeptical of whether Tim actually is in Antarctica, I think this is pretty much compelling proof that he is.
Yeah, if you have a sharp eye, you might be able to see. Let's see here. We've got some scientists over here. Got some people off the front of the ship. You can see the crane that is used to lower passengers down onto the ice. Just to sort of describe where I am on the ship, I'm standing directly above the bridge right now, which is where I connected with Captain Bangu last Friday. This area is known as Monkey Island. It's also where my live stream from Cape Town was. It is kind of like a greenhouse, typically used for observing wildlife and whales, counting whales and such when you're underway on a research expedition. And it has a nice little heater in it, has some cozy chairs. So it's a really nice place on a cold day like today to camp out, but still feel like you're outside and take in all this breathtaking scenery. Let's look towards the back of the ship here.
I think that's just so cool. As someone who actually, I'll quiet down. Tim, say something so the camera goes back to you. It's too good.
Yeah, sure. You can see here. Here's the sort of edge of this observation area. It's got to be one of my favorite places on the ship because it's always a little bit warmer. Like I said, you have the best view. You have arguably even a better view than the bridge because you're way up here. The only thing higher, and I'll aim you up, is this up here. You can see all the radar that the ship uses. You can see just one lonely little spot for an ice pilot when you really need someone with the best possible view, kind of the modern crow's nest of our ship. So this is the spot, I think. All right, I'm going to take you back in because I want to introduce you to our guest today.
Yeah, absolutely. And as Tim gets the laptop settled, so we can welcome Tim's guest today. I was just going to say, having been lucky enough to grow up by the ocean and to grow up going on different boats and to really experience the sea from being a young child onward, I learned a lot of the port, starboard, bow, stern. All the basic things of the ship. The one piece of the ship that I never learned about until this expedition was Monkey Island. I don't know how official of a term that is, but that was definitely one of the parts of the SA Gulls too that I definitely got a big kick out of.
I've tried to figure out why it is called that. There are no monkeys up here. I have not seen any monkeys on this expedition, but I'm sure there's a good reason why it got that name.
Maybe we can ask Captain Knowledge for our next live stream with him when we're on the return. So let's bring in your guests. So we have some really special guests today.
Fantastic. Yes, I can't wait to bring them in today. So today I was working on a Reach the World article about this unique environment of the Weddell Sea, and it really gave me great appreciation for the survival of Shackleton and his expedition, especially when they were left marooned or when the Endurance went down and they were sort of stuck on the ice without, the best shelter, without the best resources. And I'm really, it's kind of a great coincidence then today that I have with me Carl and Nick from desert, who are part of the team on board the ship, who are supporting all of the sort of outdoors activities on the ship. Their primary role was to be in charge of the ice camps, which we haven't had to use yet because the ship has gotten to the spots we wanted to get to. But they are fully prepared and very, very knowledgeable about how to survive in the Antarctic. So I want to bring them on camera and let them introduce themselves.
Hi guys. Hey, I'm Nick.
How's it? I'm Carl. And yeah, we work for White Desert, and as Tim was saying, our main role is to set up ice camps and look after the guys should they need be. And this has been our background for the last couple of years. We've been working with a company called White Desert, and literally we camp on the ice and we bring guests in from all over the world and set up camps on the ice. They obviously get nice luxury accommodation, luxury tents, and we get the smaller ones in the background. But yeah, that's basically what we do. Very fortunately, we have much more modern equipment than Shackleton did in his days, so it's quite comfortable.
That's so interesting. So can you just tell us a little bit about your background? How is it that you got into that type of work, being able to set up ice camps in Antarctica?
It's actually a bit of a bizarre one. I'm not sure about Nick, but I know up until 6 years ago, I'd never really seen snow. But yeah, just through a friend of mine that works for this company, we got an opportunity to get on ice and basically learn from the best, learn from our mountain guides and the guys that had been doing it for the previous years before us. And it's just become a thing that we do. You know, we spend every summer in Antarctica. We've learned all the tricks from them. We've learned ourselves through experience how to deal with blizzards, what tents work, what tents don't work, what meal structures work, what don't. And yeah, so it's just become a way of life. Strange that we're both from tropical climates, but you get used to it and you learn pretty quick.
Yeah, I found myself in the tourism industry like about 2018 to 2019, and taking tours and walking tours down remote parts of the coastline in South Africa. And through a friend as well who had been working for White Desert, they were looking for guys who were willing to get their hands dirty, and you could rough it a bit, you could manage themselves in extreme conditions. And so I got a foot in the door there, and yeah, that's led me up to being on this expedition now.
So one of the things that Carl and Nick have brought today to show is some of the things that they use. Sorry, you're wondering who's speaking. One of the things that they have brought today to show us is some of the things that they use when they're outside in Antarctica. You know, very unpredictable climate and environment. Some of the things that are light and portable and really handy to have on hand. So let's take a look at some of those. Do you guys want to start?
Yeah, we'll start with communication. So obviously, I know it's quite a uncommon thing to hear these days with the internet and everything, but obviously on us, we've got no communication. There's no Wi-Fi, there's no internet, unless of course you're on board the SA Gallus, which has a mobile satellite unit. So for us, basically, this is our lifeline, satellite phone. It can connect anywhere in the world. Extremely expensive to use, so for emergencies only. So that is great. That's one thing we use. And the other thing, very basically, is an inReach device. So it's got a little aerial on top. It works as a GPS, but quite luckily for us, there's a system where you can connect to your cell phone with Bluetooth, and you can text message home. It's very rudimentary. You don't get emojis or anything like that, but you can send basic messages. And if you're in trouble, hit the SOS button. And it's set up to locate you anywhere in the world and put you in touch with the right people. So that's basically our communication. Very, very, very basic. And for us, when we go on task, we just know that for that time that we're there, communication is limited, and we'll find out what happened in the world when we get home. We'll find out about all that stuff. But for now, our primary objective is just to survive and keep warm and try to prepare some meals for the guys, and we can talk to each other with these little things. And that's a very simple, very basic
what are some of the limitations that you have in terms of what you can bring to Antarctica and what you can bring onto the ice and what you can't?
So in terms of communication or just in general, yeah, well, I suppose it all depends on your transport there. We've for the past couple of years, we've been flying here on the Gulfstream, which is quite a small airplane. We land on a glacier, so our gear is very limited. So this year we've actually upgraded. We've now got an Airbus, so we are bringing more and more. But you do need to keep light. You need to keep mobile. You're in a moving environment. You're on snow. It sometimes melts in, and your camp melts in. You've got to move it. So the lighter the better. Lightweight tents, obviously good quality. The few basic communications, a basic heating unit, and as Nick will show you shortly, our food supplies that we bring on, which are also very, very good. But they also help us a lot with keeping the weight of our camps down and stuff. And he's also going to show you our power units and our power supplies. Can I grab that meal there, Sean? So this is one of our main meals. It's a whole meal in one packet. All you got to do is add some hot water, leave it for 10 minutes, and this particular one is beef stew. And if you're interested in dietary requirements, 602 calories just for that little packet. So you could literally eat one of these a day and you'd be fine. And we just melt snow for water, and that's it. That's all you really need. And if we're lucky and we get to bring some fresh stuff on us, and somebody's kind enough to send in a box of fruit or something, that's great. But you can get away with the bare minimum, and that is, I don't even know how many grams it is. It's probably 80 or 90 grams for that one packet, and that's a full meal for a full adult person.
It's so interesting. Sorry, I just wanted to touch on one thing that you were mentioning before with the communications, because the amazing thing is that while yes, you do when you're setting up these camps have contact with the outside world, it's still extremely limited. It's not that much in the century since Shackleton and his crew were making their transantarctic journey. We haven't improved that much. It's still very limited. It's still very challenging. And luckily, in our modern day, you have that SOS and that signal. But like you said, you're still very much cut off. And I think that's an important. It's a comparison, but it's also a little bit of a contrast. I know a lot of students who are following this expedition are really looking at what is it that the Shackleton expedition, that the Imperial Trans-Antarctic expedition had, what they did, what they experienced versus what you all are doing. And so this is really interesting to know that yes, we have this amazing technology. You can send those messages back, but it's extremely limited. And when I was looking at the food, all I was thinking about is from the records of Shackleton's expedition that they depended largely on pemmican and then creating hoosh and just basically, just like you were saying, the minimum caloric requirements, the minimum amount of food people needed to get through the day. And that was what they were really focused on. Again, it's a little bit better than it was then. You don't have to hunt for penguins for your food, but it's not that much different either.
Yeah, I think the thing is that we still just as remote. That's the thing, even with communications, you still only got what you have with you. And it's such a dry environment. There's absolutely nothing else here. There's no grocery stores. Besides a few penguins running around, there's nothing else to eat. So if you don't bring it with you, you're in trouble. And that's the important thing. Or if you bring something with you and it breaks down, or your satellite phone packs up, you don't really have a plan B. So that's the thing you also got to keep in mind. And it's you very remote, even with the technology, still in an extremely remote location.
Something that we do try and take advantage of as well. We usually do bring small generators in that provide a small power source, so we are able to charge our communication devices. We also try and make use of solar power. So this is a solar charger that gets a current through it from the sun and then enables us to charge what we need. Some of that power is also used for heating devices and sorry, I was going to say that the cooking is very basic as well. We've got gas heaters and pots and pans. We've got just use very basic, very light, small pots, and then this is some of the fuel that we use for the gas and that. And yeah, it's just basically camping on ice.
You guys talk a little bit about polar clothing. What people need to wear to be warm and safe in this environment?
Yeah, totally. So your key is always going to be layers, and like I can show you here, there's just layer after layer after layer. But very importantly, like thermal layer is very important, and then having a mid layer of down. I mean, that is so important that I think that they really could have used back in the old days. I mean, this jacket is incredibly thin, as well as my second one that I got, and they both just have a very thin down layer, and it makes an incredible difference. I see Nick's got a bit of a thicker one, but that's extremely important, is to keep as many layers as you can on, because as the temperature changes, you want to take off, take on. You don't want to overheat in one big jacket, and so to have your layers that you can manage your core temperature as you go. Thick socks, merino wool, if you can. Merino is the way to go. Expensive, but it's great, especially because we don't shower much out here, no running water. So merino does very well for managing that smell factor, which is great, and obviously the warmth. And then keep your head warm, keep your butt on.
We also with new age sort of technology, there's windproof and waterproof technology, Gore-Tex and that. And the wind can add quite a dynamic to the temperature. So it's quite important to be able to protect yourself from that. And then if there's a whiteout or blizzard or it's snowing, you want to be able to you need the waterproof equipment as well, the waterproof garments that help, that go a long way to insulating you as well.
And that's actually, it's funny that you mentioned that, because that just reminds me of something from Alfred Lansing's book Endurance, which pretty much everyone at Reach the World has read, and it's definitely the premier account of Shackleton's Antarctic Imperial Trans-Antarctic Expedition. But one of the problems that they encountered when they were on board the boats making their way to Elephant Island and later to South Georgia is that their outer layers were designed to be on the ice and they was really designed for having those layers of warmth, but they didn't have as much of the waterproofing that they needed to be in the open ocean, especially on the smaller boats. And that's when a lot of the cold was beginning to set in for them. So it's really, what you're talking about is so interesting, because it's again at this really interesting point of alignment, because it's like you need to be prepared into different environments depending on what you're being exposed to. You need to have those layers, and then waterproofing is important in certain circumstances.
Yeah, something that I don't think a lot of people realize as well is that once you start sweating on the inside as well, so if you're very active, that can cool down and can sort of get you from the inside out as well. So you're going to be a bit cautious of sweating too much as well.
Can you guys describe, so let's imagine the ice camp that we may still set up at some point, but how do people do the basic things? Where do they sleep? How do they sleep? Where do they eat? How do they eat? Where do they go to the bathroom? All the basics.
Like, so we've got I think four different tents that we use. We've got a mess tent, a general tent where all the crew and the expedition will gather. Then we've got it could be part of the same tent, but we've got a separate tent for the kitchen where we prepare meals and store all the food as well. And then we've got a separate toilet tent, and then another basic sleeping tent that we use. So those are the four different tents that we use. The sleeping tents are pretty high-end, very good technology of letting the sun's radiation in and not letting it get out, so that they're pretty well insulated. They're pretty hardy. They can take quite a beating from the elements. They've been put to the test, especially this past season that we had in Antarctica. There were quite a few blizzards, a few hundred knot winds that came through and tested the resolve of a lot of us. And then the other tents are pretty sturdy. They all pegged down into the ground, so they're do provide a good place of fortitude for staying in different conditions.
And how big are these tents in terms of just area? And I'm just trying to make sure that our students in classrooms that are following get a sense of, when you're saying there's a sleeping tent, I imagine that it's not, you know, you can do it in either meters or feet, whatever is easier, but just roughly how big of an area are each of these tents?
The mess tent is 15 by 9 feet. Yeah. So 15 feet by 9 feet is the mess tent, and it kind of looks like a vegetable tunnel if you've ever seen one, just a sort of semicircular tunnel tent, and that's great. That needs to be heated, so we do have a heater run on diesel, just diesel gas and on a battery, and that blows hot into the tent, and that's great. And then the other two tents are a little bit smaller. They're Canadian made, so they're made for the environment. And they don't really need heating. It's a toilet tent, so what we left out is that the toilets are very rudimentary. Again, there's that word. It's a bucket, and that's a bucket, and no waste can be left behind in Antarctica. So everything gets kept, and everything comes home with us, put into steel barrels, locked up nice and tight, put back on the ship at the end of the season. So those are those two, and the sleeping tents are dome tents. Pretty much if you'd see at any normal campsite, if you go and car camp somewhere, I think you could probably fit 2 single mattresses in them, the ones that we use. Strange enough, they're Australian made. I don't know why the Australians decided to make a photo tent, but they've done it and they've done a great job. The ones that we use, so you can't stand up in them, so you basically flat on your back in your tent. But I think the smaller the tent, the better, because as Nick was saying, they let the heat in, but you're also using your body heat, so you want a small enough area that you can heat it up pretty easily. And quite often you'll get to bed in the evening and you'll be freezing your backside off for 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes, and you'll wake up at 3 in the morning sweating, just because you're in like a very thick down sleeping bag. There's some really good brands, again, an Australian one and some European ones that we use, and they're great. So they're very small. I think they're classified as a 3-man tent, but we go one person to a tent, so you got space for your stuff. But I'm 6'2" tall, and I can just fit in big space. So they're great.
One downside to them is with the sleeping tents that you can't stand upright in them. So however long you're on the ice for, you're getting changed horizontally instead of vertically. So it adds a dynamic to getting changed.
I wonder too if the size of those tents, like you said, the sleeping tents aren't big enough for you to stand up in. They're so small. My guess is that part of that is that they need to be light because you need to bring everything in and everything out. And also, like you said, in this part of the world, high winds, very, very fast winds, 100-kilometer winds, 100-knot winds are not uncommon. And so the smaller dome structure, I imagine, holds up against the winds a little bit easier. Is that true?
Yes. Yeah, that is true. Yeah, they're very hardy tents.
What are you guys looking for in terms of safety when we go out on the ice? I know sometimes I see you with a stick sort of poking the ground, and you're always sort of scanning. What is it that you're on the lookout for?
Crevassing. Not so much a problem on the ice floes, but on the mainland, crevasses are a real issue.
Can you explain what are crevasses?
So basically, Antarctica is covered by a glacier. I don't know what the percentage is, but it must be 90 or something odd % of the continent is covered in a glacier, and I believe it's like 1.4 kilometers thick, so nearly a mile thick on average over the continent. So that's great, and it's super solid. But with heat and movement, because the glacier is constantly moving down towards the coast, and with heat, some summer, some warmer days, and that movement, there's big cracks that form in the ice. So that crack forms, it's fine if you can see it, but over the year, the snowfall comes and it creates a snow bridge in that crack, and you can't see it. You absolutely cannot see it. It just looks like a beautiful piece of white snow in front of you. You're walking along, and the next thing you disappear. Or you're driving a vehicle. Some of them can be 10 meters wide or 30 foot across and 100 feet deep. So if you're in it, you're in big trouble. So we just use a good old stock standard piece of bamboo pole, and you walk in front of you, and you'll feel straight away you'll go through that snow. And if you realize that there's fresh air below you, you've got a problem. So just retreat. If we're lucky, we get a GPR unit, and we can do ground penetrating radar in certain areas that we work in a lot. and that's great. And the scientists can analyze that and say, that's a dangerous area, that's a dangerous area. But bar that, the simplest solution is just with a stick, you poke around the area, feel the solid ice or snow. Cool, this is safe, there's no crevassing, we're great. Out in the ice flows, it's slightly different. The ice flow, I mean, since we've been here, we found between half a meter thick, so maybe just under 2 feet thick, up to 10 feet thick ice. So if you get anything thinner than a foot, you've got trouble. So yeah, look for it, look for the color of the ice. You can see the density of the ice. You can see it's looking a bit thinner, and not so easy to tell because ice, you can't just go poke with a stick. Fortunately, we have scientists with instruments and they can just go and measure electronically, because obviously we don't want to go through the ice and end up underneath. That would not be ideal.
There's 1 or 2 telltale signs on sea ice here with the different floats that come through, and they come together and fall rigid, and that creates an area of instability as well that you sort of to stay away from.
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting because we've actually been hearing a lot over the past few live streams. We actually were speaking with members of the South African Weather Service. We've spoken with some of the ice scientists, and a lot of the conversations with a lot of the different guests for both Reach the World and for Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants has been around the first year ice. That one of the reasons why the Agulhas has been able to make it to the wreck site is that they've been counting mostly first year ice. So that's only ice that has formed in the past year. But that is also a little bit more dangerous, like you said, because it's thinner. It hasn't had a chance to stay frozen for more than a particular year. Tim, do you have any other questions or anything else to share before we shift over to some questions? Because we got some really good ones.
Yeah, I'm just poking my head in the corner here. I wanted to ask these guys, because I know there's a great answer. Like, what would you be, say there was an emergency on the ice, what would be the process for getting somebody, from here, realistically, what would we do?
From the Agulhas, well, helicopters is our number one thing. We've got 2 helicopters, so we'd have to do fuel drops and then try and get onto mainland. And from mainland, I think Rotherham will be probably our closest station, and they've got aeroplanes and a runway there and such. So that would be the easiest. For us on the mainland, we do have aeroplanes on ice too, so and doctors and medics. So yeah, an emergency situation, we'd have to just make sure we get that person to our main runway, and then the sooner we get an aircraft in from South Africa, the better. It's not far, 5 hours by airplane in a straight line, and they're on the ice. So you could get someone out pretty quickly within a day.
All right, Chris, that's it for me. If you want to do some student Q&A.
Yeah, absolutely. So we actually got some really great questions, and a few of them, amazingly, just by the nature of this conversation, we've already had them answered. We got this really great question about, are there issues with crevasses walking on ice? Of course, we already answered that. Thanks to you talking about and explaining really what a crevasse was and why they're a concern. But there was one good question that we got recently about. And forgive me, I'm going to mispronounce this, but do you have kiviot wool? I guess it's wool made from muskox articles in your kit. Supposedly, it's 8 times warmer than sheep wool. Have either of you ever used that? Have you? It's not something that I personally know of.
No, it's not something that I've heard of. And can I ask that person where they get it from? Because I wouldn't mind some. It sounds great. No, we use merino is our go-to for the warmest wool. But yeah, that sounds awesome. If we had something warmer, we would use it.
Yeah, we'll be sure to track that down. I'm very interested to learn more about this as well. And so there's another question that I think this was from the beginning, right when we were getting started with today's session, was when you're out on the frozen sea ice, if you were to melt it, would it be salty, brackish, or fresh water? And just for everyone to know, when we say brackish, what we mean is that it's not quite as salty as salt water that you find in the ocean, but it's not quite as, but it still has some salt in it. So sort of if you think about salt water on one end of the continuum, fresh water on the other, with this melted ice, what would we expect to find if we were to to melt it and drink some of it.
Yeah, so it depends, as Tim was saying, he interviewed the scientists, our scientists a few days ago, and they would have described how, and what you mentioned as well about the different layers, the first year ice, the new ice and that, and it depends on the layers that you've gone through. If you were to go and take a layer of, I mean, if you had to dig into the ice, it would come up salty for sure. If there was fresh snow on top, you might get a thin layer of snow. And if you managed to scrape that off, that would taste a lot fresher. But as you get deeper down into the ice, the saltier it'll get. It also depends on a few individual factors that might play a part with some of the ice flow that breaks up, whether some seawater gets on top and runs over it as well, then that will influence the salt as well, yeah, the flooding of the ice flow. So it depends on the layer, depends where you go. So it's a bit of a lottery sometimes.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting too, because it also, and it's something that we talked a little bit about with the ice scientists last week, because there's an element of it too that it's also relating to, and this is really for our high school audiences and maybe middle school audience, but it's relating to density and about how there's a difference in density between, especially when you're talking about temperature, whether it's seawater, fresh water, et cetera, and that plays a factor in how all of this is happening. So we got a really great question from Miss Mesk, who is one of our educators. Her students have been live on camera in the past. Her classroom is actually out this week for a school vacation, lucky them. But Miss Mesk is watching, and she wanted to know if you can explain what a bird's eye view of an ice camp looks like. So we can maybe envision in our mind's eye, if we were to look at an ice camp from maybe a bird's eye or a drone's eye view, what would that be?
Yeah, I'll try to find you a picture now and try and show you, but just while I found it earlier, I don't know if you're gonna see, is it better? Can you see that at all?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. So that's one of our sleeping tents, and that's kind of what it looks like after it's been there for a couple of days, and there's a bit of snow build-up. So yeah, they get like that. You'll never really get snowed in. You can always dig your way out. Every week or so, we'd dig out our tents, reset them on another flat piece of ground, and strangely enough, the flatter the ground with the least stuff you have around you, the better. You want the wind to hit you and pass you by. Don't ever build a wall behind you or go hide behind a dune, because the snow is just going to hit that, and it creates a low pressure on the lee edge, and that snow is just going to land on you, and you'll be buried within hours.
So while Carl looks for the picture, that's quite an important point about the nature or the placement of the tents, so that they don't create. The snow behaves in a very different way when it comes from the front side, the leeward side, and it builds up behind a structure that's with the thermal of the snow. And so generally, if there's a whiteout or blizzard, you find that you get these big ridges that form behind these objects. So if you've got a tent here, or you've got one tent here and put another one behind it because you think you're being protected, you're actually creating an environment for that tent to get snowed in on. So you want to have enough distance between tents, or put them across from each other so that the prevailing winds don't allow for that snow to build up onto the other tents. So an ice camp, a designed bird's eye view of that would be in such a specific way that the tents are not too far apart, so that you can't get to them in case of emergency. If there was, we'd normally have rope access along there, so if you can't see with a whiteout, sometimes you can't see more than half a meter in front of you, so you've got access to, or you've got a direction to your tent, but you want to place it in such a way that everywhere is accessible and is not creating a snow or a ridge line that's gonna make life difficult for you.
Basically in a straight line.
Yeah.
With the wind hitting you always from behind. So you put your back starts into the wind, and you keep in a straight line so that the wind can pass you all at the same time. Just that's what our Weather Haven tent looks like. That's our mess tent. Two of us Skidoos, that's our company transport that we ride around in. And what we would have is either side of that tent in a line going out, we'd have our sleeping tents. That's one of our smaller camps. I mean, we normally have 5 people there maximum, so that tent is 15 foot by 15 foot by 12 foot, and then we'll probably have 5 of those little yellow sleeping tents either side, and that's pretty much it. That's all you need to survive. And then obviously the toilet tent, but we'll leave that picture out of it for now. if you
So if I'm just I just want to make sure that I get this. So if I'm sketching this out mentally, so if I'm imagining that if the wind is maybe blowing this way, what we'd want to do is just make sure that all of the tents are arranged in a line like this, so that way because what we don't want is to have the wind blow into one tent and then on top of another one, because that second tent is going to be the one that gets buried, correct?
Absolutely.
You want them more perpendicular to the wind, yeah. To the prevailing wind, yeah. Even and also having the doors opening in certain ways, so knowing which way you're going to open the door. So just the small things that you can either learn by first hand, or just you don't have to learn it first hand, but you pick it up as you go along.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you only make that mistake once, right?
You would think. Yeah, sometimes you're falling asleep. Got a interesting picture. That's our transport, our other transport.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So this is something. So we basically land on the continent on a very nicely groomed runway, which is totally blue ice. It's completely blue ice. But in order to get there, we need to get a team there to prepare it with ice machines. And those guys come from Canada, and they fly from area to area to area on a DC-3 Basler. This aircraft was built in 1943. So it's obviously been upgraded quite a bit, but it lands in Rothera on the Antarctic Peninsula, and it swaps from wheels to skis. And it can basically land anywhere, soft snow, hard snow, whatever, as long as it's fairly flat. So then when we're on the continent, that's our transport. There we go. So that's our transport. So that airplane, we got 2 of them. One was built in 43, the other one was built in 45. And that's what we fly around, and they take 19 people at a time. And that's really, really cool. So at our main runway, we have this ice glacier, hard, perfect, can land a Boeing on it, which we have. And once they're there, and we have to land they can probably land here on the ice floe, no problem. They're flat enough, it's got skis, and those Canadian pilots are something quite special, and they can put it down anyway. And that's how we get our guests and ourselves around the continent.
Wow, that's incredible. So I actually do have a, we're running a little bit on time, but I've had multiple requests to see the image of the toilet tent. So if you have a picture of that.
I'll see if I can. I have it in my presentation.
I have to say, I've worked with classrooms for long enough to, as soon as you put the word toilet out to students, that's a dead ringer for we want to see that.
I don't think it's going to happen. Yeah, I've got those on my laptop, unfortunately. Yeah, I don't think it's here.
Well, we'll make sure. We'll make sure if you can get those pictures over to Tim, we would love to include those in an upcoming Reach the World photo album. Maybe we can do a whole photo album on setting up an ice camp. We can use some of your photos, obviously with credit, but we would love to be able to share those, because it is already probably the most popular thing that we've taken out of this conversation.
I actually do have something for you.
Oh, excellent.
So what we did the one year, but this was just the once off, is we had a really big snowdrift that we got kind of bored with no airplanes for a week or so. So we built this. So if I can see that bucket, that's basically a bucket where we dug it into a snowdrift and put a little magazine rack there in the corner, etc. But this is a very fancy version. But basically, that's your bucket with a toilet seat, and that's it. And it's got a plastic bag inside, and when it's full, you take the plastic bag out and put a new one in. And that travels with us wherever we go until we go home. So we get really, really personal, and yeah, it's a bonding experience.
I'm sure that's the thing that people talk about when they come back. It's like, well, what did you do? You went to Antarctica. What did you do? Well, have I got a picture for you?
Yeah, you get very comfortable with a lot of things there.
Hang on, wait.
No?
And in a tent, so one is for number ones, one is for number twos. There we go. So that is literally it in a tent. It's fantastic, very high tech, but they also don't break because there are other sort of camping toilets that you can use with mechanical arms that look like hungry hippos, you know, and suck it all down. But they break often, and you got to get stuck in and fix them. So we found that the bucket's the best way. It's infallible. You can't break them. Nothing will go wrong. You don't have any code browns.
you can't break a bucket. So as we're wrapping up, what a way to end. As we're wrapping up, there is one more question, and this is a continuation actually of a question or of a conversation that that we had probably with Tim on one of the very first live streams that we did about. One of the main things that Tim was packing was a whole bunch of ginger to be making ginger tea because that helps with seasickness. And I'm wondering because, especially because Carl, Nick, you two are a little bit more well seasoned, having come here. I know you don't just come here over on ships like the Agulhas, but do you number one, are you big on drinking ginger tea too to stave off seasickness? And if not, do you have any other remedies? And then also, Tim, just to come back around to you, how is your ginger supply holding out?
Any tips you have really for?
Yeah, ginger's a great one. Ginger's a great one. Apples is another good one. Steer clear of dairy products is another solid one. But yeah, otherwise, I don't really know. Have you had any other ones?
No, I don't know.
Yeah, keep warm. Ginger is a great one. It's been around. My background is in boating and scuba diving for the last 20 years, and people who are getting seasick, ginger sweets has always been a popular bet. And lollipops and apples. I'm not sure if the lollipop actually helps, but it takes your mind off things for a while. So yeah. But I think we've been pretty good on this cruise. We haven't seen anyone vomiting overboard yet.
Yeah, we've been pretty stable. I think a lot of people came prepared with a pharmaceutical kit full of anti-nausea and that, but not many home remedies as more than the ginger.
Well, that's good to know. That's good to know. Our students were definitely worried because we did hear there was a couple of rough days as you're making your way into the Weddell Sea. So it's good to know that it's been stable since. Hopefully it's the same as in the next week or so as the ship heads out of the Weddell Sea and back into more of the open ocean where things can get a little bit more complex. So we are just about out of time. I do want to express my sincere appreciation to both of you, Carl and Nick, obviously, and to Tim for being with us today. We are going to be back tomorrow with another live stream. We're going to be talking with Tim and another special guest tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern. And then we'll be speaking, my friend Joe from Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants will be doing a final live stream this week on Friday. So please be sure to visit explore.reachtheworld.org for more information, including seeing when our upcoming events are. Also be visiting reachtheworld.org to see the latest content that Tim is writing in his regular updates to the expedition. But what we'll end on today is Carl, Nick, just thank you guys so much. If you have any final pieces of advice before we get going, the floor is yours to end.
Any words of wisdom there, Nick? To survive the ice.
For me, rule number one: keep a sense of humor.
Yeah, solid.
And yeah, I think there's a lot of things that you don't have to get ambushed by. So with a bit of planning, you can keep ahead of some things, but also being able to be a bit resourceful when situations do go a bit south.
Yeah, I'll second that. That sounds good. And just dress warm and don't ever be a hero. If you're cold, you're cold. Go and get warm somehow. Don't push it, because once it's gone too far, you're in trouble.
I think that's a good piece of it.
I'm not trying to be a hero. I'm nice at the work, but I'm doing great.
Yeah, Tim, you and Seeley both, absolutely. And I think that the piece of advice about planning ahead and being and thinking ahead is a really good piece of advice for all of our students out there. It's something that I know I used to tell my middle school students all the time. So thank you all for being here. Thank you to our guests, and thank you to our guests in the future for who will be watching this on demand. Like I said, you'll be able to catch us tomorrow when we have our next live stream, and with that, I will leave you all today. Enjoy the rest of your day in the Weddell Sea. Thanks so much, guys.
Thanks for having us. Cheers, students.
Sweet.